Welcome to Jo Avalon's Cuppa Chats, and today I'm joined by Rachel Scoltock, author, angel medium, and fellow Aquarian. I couldn't help it. Hey, Rachel, so you're an author, and I've been following you and stocking your books for quite some years. So the first one that you wrote was the Loving Your Sensitive Self, and it's really an evergreen, isn't it? It's something that people can still, it's not gone out of date. You can still be tuning into it and picking it up and getting really good tips and understandings on the way of understanding your energy and how to not just protect it but manage it when you're around in all sorts of different situations.
Yes.
And then following on from that, you wrote My Life with Angels, which is a much more, I guess, also almost autobiographic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's like a I can't think of the word, but it's about my life, but it's also a
Memoir?
teaching book as well. Memoir, that's it. Go on, it went out of my head. Yeah. And it's funny what you say. I bought my books too, just in case.
Oh, good.
It's funny what you say about loving your sensitive self, because I actually think it was before its time. I think that like at the time, no one was talking about empathy and sensitives and energy, and now it's in. It's people are talking about it, they're asking about it, and when I first launched it, people were like, I don't really know. Publishers didn't really get it, and now lots and lots of books and passes caught up.
Oh, awesome. So you have another book on the way, don't you?
I do. It's very slow though, as things have got busier. So
Yes.
I'm looking at. There's so many things I want to write as well. So there's always going to be a book on the way. But I'm really looking at writing about Archangel Michael
Ah,
and my experiences with Archangel Michael and how people can connect, because so many people ask me about Archangel Michael and how they can connect with him and how they can ask for his protection. So that's one of the subjects I'm writing on, and also on manifesting as well.
and that's manifesting
Yeah.
with the angels.
Yes.
Sorry, would that
Yes.
be manifesting with the angels? Mm.
Yeah. Yes, it would be. No, you're 100% right. You're psychic, but yeah, the there's lots of books out there about the law of attraction and The Secret, which are all wonderful, but this is how the angels can help you to manifest. So you're still using the law of attraction and energy and your own thoughts, but also having the angels come in and help guide and even coach you and help you with your energy to attract those things that you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well, in good time, I'm sure, in divine timing, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I
Definitely. There's so many things.
absolutely, with so many things, absolutely. We can push and shove as much as we like, but it'll only happen when it's time for it to happen, right? So
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
what I was really keen and what kind of really pushed me to email you and say, please, can we have a cuppa chat, was you've just come back from Uluru, or Alice Springs as well. And there was something in your latest email that said something about, not just great changes, because you're always managing change, but there was just something in that about the connection to the land there. And I've always been fascinated, because you've been going to Uluru for quite a few years, at least 5 years publicly, probably longer privately, and
Yes.
you take a group there every year and do a retreat, which was what you were there for this last time, yeah? But you stayed in an extended
Yes.
amount
Yeah.
of time to do your own thing, I'm guessing. And I'm just really curious about your connection to the land there, your connection and respect with the Ananu people, the custodians of that land there, their country. And I
Yes.
just want to hear more about that.
Okay, wonderful. I'm really
Yeah.
glad. Look, before I start, I am really happy to be here and do this with you. Like
Oh, good.
as soon as you asked me, I was like, it was just a full-on yes. I knew we were going to have fun, but can't remember how long I've known you or how long ago we met, but we've had this connection for a long time, and I
Yes.
really appreciate you, and I love that you're doing this. But yeah, and you've got a connection to Australia, Australia's outback too. I know that that's
Mm.
something that you're you have in you as well. And as somebody that, I mean, I came here, obviously I'm originally not Australian, I'm British, and I came out as a backpacker in the 90s and never, I mean, I am legal, but, and I always say I'm a backpacker that never went home, but I am legally allowed to be here, just in case.
No, I'm on the phone to them right now.
Yeah. So, but ever since then, I had this pull to, as soon as I went out to Uluru the first time as a backpacker in a camper van, it just drew me. And I was counting this trip, I think is my 14th or 15th time to Uluru and that area. So yeah, every year since 2015, apart from 2020 when nobody went anywhere.
We don't mention that year.
No, that which we do not speak of. I've ran a retreat there called Angels at Uluru.
Yes. And
the last couple of years, I've figured out that there is this amazing group called Mariku Arts who offer Ananu guided tours. So the traditional owners of the land guide you to the cave arts and significant sacred parts of Uluru and tell us about history, tell us about their own cultural practices. So that has just made it even more meaningful for me, and meaningful in a way of like, how amazing is it to connect with the people that have had an uninterrupted culture there for thousands, tens of thousands of years, but who are still speaking in their own language. So it's, you know, and people that have come with me on that tour at the retreat sometimes have been people that have never come across, unbelievably to me, but have, you know, never come across Australian Indigenous people knowingly in their...
Knowingly, yeah, right.
Yeah, and didn't know that there was other languages, that the First Peoples language, and didn't know about the art and the you know, it's caves and all things around Uluru that you don't see in the postcard pictures. So that's been important to me, because when I first came to Australia as a backpacker, all I wanted to know about was Aboriginal culture, Indigenous history, you know, what they thought, what they did, their places, their as much as I was allowed to know. Totally. And I did a course called Aboriginal Studies at Kempsey TAFE in 2000 as an overseas student, and from that moment I felt like I want to do something that, I don't know, helps people understand more, have a deeper understanding and connection. So it's kind of a bit of a privilege for me to be able to just be the facilitator that brings a few people out to that place to do spiritual practice, you know, from my perspective, angel card readings, understanding how to get your guidance, connect with your intuition, but also to connect with the first people of that place. It just feels like a huge, beautiful honor. And I don't know, it's hard to know where to begin with what my connection is, because I've had so many weird and wonderful experiences out there. And you know, from having a dingo steal my hat one day when I was taking photographs of Uluru, to, you know, having spiritual things come through to me, messages come through to me, or seeing visions around the room. It's something I feel very connected to, but at the same time I feel a little bit I don't want to appropriate it, because it's not mine, it belongs to Ananu. And
yes, and I suppose too, the more you make the effort to understand, to listen and to connect and to understand how Ananu live, and how that might inform the way that you learn or live, I don't know, but the more connected you feel, the more easy it is to, I imagine is it easier to think that you're one of them, almost, not quite, but almost, and that stepping over that line of appropriation does become a bit more blurred, perhaps, especially if you've been back so many times, and if they, you know, you've got people you connect with each time that you go there, and you feel, you know,
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how strong is that line? Like, it's so easy to do us and them. I mean, but then it's so easy to say we're all one. Do you know what I'm saying? It's that tension, even if you don't want it to be there.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, and we are all one. And I think, someone said to me recently that Indigenous people are so generous, like worldwide,
Mm.
and in Australia in particular, is that they share their culture. They believe in sharing and that everyone is one. Um, and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that are non-Indigenous that don't like that, and it's not, it's been in our social culture conditioning to keep and grab and own and to do the separation stuff. So yeah, I think there is a fine line, because I feel a sense like sometimes when I get off the plane, or even as you come into land at Uluru airport, it feels like coming home to me. And I think, is that because I can feel it on a spiritual level, and it feels like a very safe place spiritually and energetically, or is it a past life?
Mm.
There's, or is it that oneness, that we've all at some stage been everyone, if you believe in past lives, and
That's right. I do. Yeah.
yeah, and we've all been, sometimes I stand in those 800 million-year-old places, like Uluru is 800 million year old according to geologists, right? And
Mm.
some of the canyons and the gorges around that area in Alice Springs, and I feel it's a timeless feeling. you
Mm.
you you're away from these things and all of the stuff that reminds us constantly that the world is changing.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
could go to those places, and it's timeless. Nothing has changed really.
Yeah.
It's ancient all at the same time. It brings you back into that moment. So I think we run into trouble with appropriation is that when we take something and call it our own, especially when it's cultural, and they have such an intricate cultural practices, law, language, and art, that to try and sort of say that we know better, or we own it, or that's where we run into trouble. But I think we are free to feel that sense of awe and amazement, and to just share in that space for whatever it means for us.
Mm.
Yeah,
Because you
yeah,
can't
it's
not
complex.
connect to a place, because we're human. We are sentient. We're but humans. I mean, I've been listening to a couple of podcasts lately, and um, which talk about connection, and talk connection to the land and to the place, and how intricate and complex that actually is. And us as Westerners try to simplify things too much. Sorry. And I was thinking, oh gosh, I do that too. And in fact, I'm still
Yeah,
grappling with the words around this concept, I guess, too, is the Indigenous ways of knowing are complex, because they don't see things separately from each other. There's no boxing. This happens here, and that has impact on things that happen in all the other places, and at the same time this happening here impacts that over there, and it actually is complex, and it's all about being in place. And maybe when you go to
yes,
Uluru, and I feel this, when I go out west, beyond the ranges and right out to Cobar, Broken Hill, there's this, probably more Broken Hill, um, this completely separated from my everyday life. It doesn't, and all of that stuff is so far away. You're free to kind of go, oh wow, and take in
yeah,
what's going around you, and allow some of those molecules to kind of like rejiggle and fall into a different place, maybe even,
yeah,
just like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I do like that. I like the thought of being rejiggled.
Rejiggled.
I think that comes really close to what it feels like, though. That you're away from, because, and I think it has a lot to do with being in the moment,
Mm.
and maybe that's some of the wisdom that Indigenous people have, is that they know that they've gotten that connection with nature. It's so much more than just sort of sitting with us. It's the whole entire feeling. What about you? Models and and how that is it, how we remember that we're part of it, and
Yeah.
not just tourists looking at it,
Yes.
through a
True.
screen or through binoculars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Maybe, I mean, it's really hard when you're speaking of what other people might think, but
Yeah.
from what I can glean,
And do you
yeah.
think you're,
I
do you
went
think
to,
you're, sorry, I was just going to say from what, but also seeing as you've been going there for so long, do you think that your connection to or appreciation has changed over time? Like you can sort of see a change in the way that you're connecting to that energy now too?
yeah, yes, definitely. That's well said, actually. I really noticed it this time, that, I remember all of the trips I've had out there, and there are times, like there's a particular gorge outside of Alice Springs that I've been to. I visited it when my dad had died.
Mm.
I went on a trip out there to Uluru and then to Alice Springs, and Ormiston Gorge was where I let go of all of my grief.
Mm.
And it's just this vast ancient gorge, and there was something about sitting on the river rocks looking up at these big walls, I let everything go, and I had a really profound message that came through to me, and I revisited it several times to go back to that exact spot and felt it again. And then I did the same thing when my dog Bear died a couple of years ago. I've had him for 17 years, and that was a profound grief for me.
Mm.
And what I hadn't been able to let go of in my bedroom, in that gorge, it just again swamped me. And then this time I went, it's full of water. I've never seen it full of water
Yes.
before. Yes. So I was able to swim,
Oh.
and everything was green, whereas never been green before. There were green budgies everywhere. I love wild budgies.
Wow.
And floating in that water, I didn't feel any grief that time, but I thought, I'm seeing things that I couldn't see before, and I'm feeling a gentleness in the energy. Like it felt like all of the times I've been, it's like a part of me gets stripped back,
Mm.
and I see and feel something different, not just about the place, but of myself as well.
Mm.
Which is possibly, thinking about it now, why I keep going back. One of the reasons.
And like you say, for you, that's a safe place to do that stuff, to do that paring back.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's very wild, and even when there's people around, you don't feel like it's crowded.
Mm.
There's never that feeling.
Mm.
Yeah. It's they're definitely special places, but I did find out this time by spending time with some local people, Aboriginal people, is that and I think I've always known this, but I hadn't heard it said to me, is how alive the country is.
Mm.
So, because ceremony is performed and there is still um, living traditional owners on country, that relationship has been broken or too badly disturbed by colonization, and therefore the spirit is much louder, much bigger and stronger
Mm.
in the energy of the land, yeah, and
Mm.
significant places, yeah.
Mm.
So I think that's got a lot to do with it.
Louder. Isn't that
Interesting.
interesting? The energy's louder. Hasn't been as muffled or
Yeah.
scuffed about as say, because I meant to at the beginning, and I apologize, I forgot. Because my practice isn't practiced enough, I acknowledge I'm on Awabakal country, which is, we know as Lake Macquarie, and I'm reading a book at the moment about the Convict Valley, and it's called The Convict Valley. It was published last year, but it's actually about the first contact, and those first sort of 50 years of contact from the late 1780s to the 1850s, you know, significant contact and opening up of movement of colonists and convicts and all of that, you know, up to Newcastle from Sydney, and what that meant, and the interactions. So I'm only a chapter in. So, you know, this area is so scuffled in comparison to what you're talking about there at Uluru, and yet those energies are still strong. There are local people who are re-emerging. They've never been gone, but they're re-emerging publicly with their traditions and their ceremonies and just the stories, passing down the stories from the families about things that used to be done in years gone by. So they're now doing them again to kind of like anchor it, I suppose. And also nearby here at the University of Newcastle, or I think it's, it is separate from, there's a company that actually specialises in creating dictionaries of language. And so they help local communities recreate their dictionaries of language, which I just think I wanted to be a linguist when I was in high school. I just think that's so amazing. Yeah. I can only speak English.
There's always time. You know.
Sure.
There you go. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think of one now. I can't think of another. Palia is from out at Uluru. They say Palia.
Yes.
Here I'm on Dungari country, so acknowledging the traditional owners of this country. And a little bit further up the road is Gumbangi, and they, when I first came to this area, I visited the school where they had gone to Canberra to visit the archives to reconstruct the language for Gumbangi, which, you know, is both incredible and powerful and heartbreaking that is, you know, how things got lost. So, and now it's just part of life, you know. I was talking with someone recently that you know, language is taught in schools.
Oh, wow.
There in Nambucca and around Coffs Harbour and
Wow.
So it's amazing. So obviously, you know, language is another piece, isn't it? It's
I was just thinking that it's a framework for a way of knowing, isn't it? Because it's the way you express. It's one of the ways. It's not the way. It's one of the ways you express and communicate is through language. But it's a framework for a knowing.
Yes, and and I love that that this seems to be happening all over it in a way, from little things, snippets I'm hearing and seeing, that reconnection. Maybe that's a bit unfair. I mean, there's never been a loss of connection. It's just been interrupted or
smuffled
by colonization and some of the awful things that have been done and are still done. It's worth saying. To Aboriginal peoples,
all around the country of all ages. And it's hard to imagine. Sorry, I keep talking. I think there's a bit of a delay and I keep accidentally talking over you. Sorry, but
it's fine. I could ramble over it.
You're not rambling. And anyway, this is the forum for rambling. It's incredible that when so many people are making conscious efforts and not even effort, conscious movements to connecting and understanding and respecting and learning and all of the stuff and incorporating, not like us assimilating with Aboriginal understanding, not the other way around, that there can still be, you know, the powers that be in various places enacting policies that just kind of go, what the hell do you think you're doing? What's the point? What is the point?
It's destructive and toxic and completely insensitive, really. Some of the things that a lot of the things that are going on, and
Mm.
it's hard to know. Yeah, it's I'm seeing a lot more of that, as I sort of, the more often I travel, and
Mm.
I guess that you can be in a tourist bubble sometimes and only see what you're meant, what the tourism thing wants you to see or what you want to see. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
sometimes you've got to take the goggles off and have a little look
Have
at
a good look.
really, truly what's
Yes.
going on. Yeah.
Yes. And
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 yeah.
that, because like you, I travel solo. And I think one of the good things about traveling solo is that you can decide, you know what, I'm going to go and check out that mound over there. And I don't have to say to somebody, I really think that mound needs looking at. Oh, what do you want to look at that for? It's just dirt. It's like, well, it just looks like a really
Yeah.
interesting piece of dirt. I'm going to go and check out that mound.
That's right.
and who knows? And, oh, I'll tell you this story. I was in Broken Hill a couple of years ago, just minding my own business at my shopping centre pop-up. And this fella came and did a really long walk around my table. And you know how you do an assessment, he was not my ideal customer. I was looking at, why is he spending so much time looking at my stuff anyway? So he worked his whole way around, and then he had this amazing tie on, and I couldn't help it. And I said, man, I really like your tie. It was some Looney Tunes tie, right? And my husband loves Looney Tunes. So I was like, oh man, Looney Tunes tie. Well, he opened up, and in conversation backwards and forwards, it turned out that he's actually a work colleague of my father's.
Wow.
Totally. And it was hilarious. I took a photo and I sent it to my dad and I said, guess who I've run into? And he was working for council out there and was out there for an extended period of time, and I was there for the week. So we met up a couple of times, and he took me out to the sculptures, the sculptures at Broken Hill, and I've been a few times with the people I stay with, but you see things with different people. And because he was there on his own, he a very thoughtful person and has an inquiring mind, so he took me out there. But before we got there, before dusk, because that's the best place to go and check out the sculptures at sunset, took me to another, and he says, oh, have you been over here? There's some markings, there's some carvings in the stone, in the rocks and stuff. And he showed me, and it was definitely set up for people to look at. It wasn't like out of the way or anything. And I thought, oh,
Yes.
I never knew to look there. I hadn't had time to take the time to explore that sort of stuff. I thought, oh, how interesting. So then, we kind of looked a bit more and then went up to the sculptures and that. And so the next time I went out by myself and had time, I went back and had a bit more of a look around. And each time, I go there, I go back to some of the places I always go to, because you're building up layers of connection, I think, is what's happening. I go back to Mundi Plains and the lookout over the plains. And, for most of the time I've ever gone there, like at Uluru, it's been dry and it's been, just patches of red dirt. This time it was patches of green and red dirt. And it was like, oh my goodness. Now, if I'd not consistently gone there every year, I would have missed the significance of that change in the landscape there. And the layers of connection, I think, is where I'm going with that. But there's the solo stuff. Like if you've gone with someone, they say, oh, we've been there. What are we doing that again for?
That's right. Yeah, you and that freedom to do the thing that you want to do, or the thing that you feel called to do. Because I do that. I go to the same things over and over again, and probably other people would say to me, why do you want, we've done that. I've heard other people say that, oh, we've been there already, we don't need to go again. But it does change, it does shift, and it is a nice feeling to go back. But I like that layer of connection, because that's really, and I wonder if there's something where I sometimes feel like I'm affecting it as well.
Yeah.
So, years ago, 2015, when I went out to Uluru, I went to see the Dalai Lama speak. He was going to do his talk at the Oval. Yeah.
Yes.
And lots of people were out there for that. And that morning, I went for a walk with a friend, and I bumped into the Dalai Lama's party were having a meeting with the elders, the Ananu elders, at a certain spot, and so I was able to meet the Dalai Lama just by being there at that time. He came by and shook our hand, and I found out after that that the Dalai Lama was going to Glastonbury. Directly he went to Glastonbury because my mum sent me a clipping from the paper, Indigenous Culture, and then he went to somewhere like Mount Shasta. And Mount Shasta, I think Glastonbury's the throat chakra. I think Mount Shasta is supposed to be the heart chakra. I can't remember, one of those.
One of the chakras, yes.
So he was visiting in that year all of those power sites, and one after the other. And for me, that made me think he was doing that not just for, to visit. He was having an effect on the place. I mean, obviously Dalai Lama's carrying a lot of light and energy with him in who he is.
Yeah.
And then since then, there's been times when I've been at Uluru where I've had a message to do something, think something, or meditate on something.
Yeah.
And I have that sense that, who am I? Like, I'm just, just little me here. But it is our intention, and it is what we carry that does make a difference in the world in some way, shape, or form, in some tiny part. So I wonder if when we're doing those layers of connection, it's not just our own free will that is behind it. There's a guided aspect to it as well.
So we're drawn back to that to further the connections, to take that energy back perhaps, or to embody that energy, to sort of share it out. Oh yeah, wow, that's a new concept. See, you can hear me thinking.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. But I'm thinking out loud too, but I don't want to come across as thinking I'm like the Dalai Lama, because that's not where I'm going with this.
I'm not hearing that. Yeah.
We're all doing something, and the more love and light and healing energy we bring with that good intention, that's, maybe that is helping to undo some of the
ill intentions. Yes, the ill intention.
Yeah.
And in one of the podcasts I was listening to earlier, this fella had written a book, and he wasn't being distributed for whatever reason. And he said, well, actually, I think the elders wanted me to, it's by word of mouth. So I've been doing a lot of interviews and a lot of podcasts. I've spent the last year talking. But, you kind of like, I'm desperate to get this book now. And it's Tyson Yanka Porter. I knew I'd get that wrong. Sand Talk is the name of the book, and his first name is Tyson. Yeah, Yanka Porter. There we go. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself there. About word of mouth. So we need to connect first before we can bring it in and understand it, and then we can go out and talk about it. Can't do it the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So in order for us to understand, I suppose, those layers of connection, that returning to that same spot. And I suppose that's why they become sacred places, because people are drawn to return to those places over and over and over again. And so there are also in the land itself layers and layers of connection with people who then go back to wherever they've come from, or going on to, and sharing that energy along. Maybe. Yeah,
that's right. And if you think of somewhere like, is it Lourdes? Where people go, it's almost like a pilgrimage, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's a sacred energy for the people that go there. There's healing energy there, and then they take that, it not only affects them, but they take that with them. So it's like a well almost, where you're the sacred energy that's built up at places like Uluru, that is perhaps in itself, I feel like it's like a big crystal, like a big magnetic. It has a pulse, it's got its own energy, but also the ceremony that we know nothing about, this isn't
our business.
ours, but the traditional owners, their sacred ceremonies that have been performed over tens of thousands and thousands of years. That's also having an effect in like a temple would, like the more you go to that temple, the more you feel that spiritual energy of all the people that pray there. So there's a combination of things, and then there's other modern people that are going with their own version of sacred, I guess.
Yes. And do you reckon there's room for that? Like, this is not a judgment question. I'm genuinely curious. Is there room for that, for us to bring our own sacred, or is there
I'm in two
an
minds about
intrusion?
that.
Yeah, I know, right?
I have to be careful because I got annoyed with someone this time, and I shouldn't have probably, but talking, and in the past there's been people, when I went at Christmas, there had been a conference out there, and there was still a few remaining stragglers from that conference that were, on their own spiritual journey with their own spiritual beliefs. And there were people that were kneeling and worshipping. What's it called when people fall to the ground? Supplication. So kind of, and to the rock. And I thought that I was a bit uncomfortable with that, because I don't think that's how it is seen by the traditional owners. I think for many reasons, there's different places. There's places you can go, places that are men's, places that are women's, different stories. I think we just have to be careful, because it is living culture. It's alive. True.
So true.
So I don't know that we can come with this is, I don't know, different aspects of what other people believe. But then that, I guess, if you've got a sacred belief, like I believe in angels, that's, angels are my guides. They're what I teach about and do my healing with, and for when I've traveled in other places in Australia, I've seen what look like angelic beings on cave walls, but they're not called angels in that culture. But they are creator ancestors spirits with great wisdom, and they're fierce, and they're a bit scary. And so, we use the word angel, and it's kind of connected with Christianity, I guess, because that's our
heritage. Well, it's mine. I get that.
Yeah, same. Not that I'm coming at it from a religious perspective, but a lot of the images and stuff are kind of borrowed from that area, even because that's our framework. That's our frame of reference. And then any Indigenous person from any part of the world would have a different frame of reference. For any being that's coming with messages, teachings, and protection. So I guess it's more of the connotation and what we're projecting. We've got to be careful not to project. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yes. So, for example, if I were to go to Uluru and I have some ideas in my mind about the space there, my best bet would be just to be respectful of the people around me and keep my ideas to myself, but go through whatever process that I need to do to connect, or whatever it is that I'm there for. But it's just for me.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
It's just for me. Yes,
because it is, and because of everything I think that has happened, and I've done lots of reading and lots of study of what's happened in this country in the last 200 years and how that has affected, and I can't claim to know everything, only what, for what I've read and studied. But I think that's where it becomes dangerous, if we do project and we do try to inflict our own stuff on, you know, there's this real fragile energy of you know, that place belongs to them, and that isn't fragile, but it's fragile in that how the past has affected Aboriginal people's connection to the land, or not their connection, but more their access to it.
Yeah, yeah. And it isn't this interesting, like this conversation I'm really enjoying, and I'm enjoying the space of being able to just flesh out concepts without being an expert or even knowing what's coming next. You know,
Yeah,
that
me too.
magic
Me
of
too.
Uluru and the Outback.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it it is that I think it takes courage, you know, Joe. I really do. Because I see and hear so many things where I could cringe, and I used to have lots of arguments with people who were being racist and derogatory, and then I stopped doing that because it wasn't getting me anywhere except drained, exhausted, and angry.
Yes. Yes.
And but I will still stand up for what's right if there is something wrong going on. I'm not
Yeah.
someone who backs down.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, and lots of people have been known to say, like, when I've been thinking about moving to Alice Springs, and I have decided not to at this time right now, and that's why I went and spent some time out there. And I didn't want to announce it because of all kinds of things, but I wasn't sure. But I had a really intense journey with that. But one of the things that wasn't intense about it, but not everyone, a few people said to me, "Oh, did you see a current affair? You know, there's trouble in Alice Springs," and
Gosh.
it's always about what the local communities are doing and Aboriginal people, and that isn't what I have a problem with. I mean, I acknowledge that there are difficulties, and if there are people living in poverty and very, like, almost third world conditions to some degree, and then there's a massive disparity, and also people aren't being treated very well, and there's all sorts of other issues that have come from colonization and etc. But the problem for me isn't that there might be a little bit of crime and a few things going on. The problem is, for me, is that harsh racial attitude that there is from white to Aboriginal, rather than it being the other way around.
And
I find that attitude so painful to be around. And people who are very strong in their ideas about how things are, and they don't think that they're racist. That's what gets me. But
I'm not racist,
but yeah. Oh, that's like a bloody, what's it called? It's like a chant, a mantra.
it is, isn't it?
But you are. But yeah, that's hard for me to be around, and I feel like an absolute idiot saying that, because I'm not suffering from anything except for having to listen to it. But then we are all one, are we not? And therefore, well, while there is other people suffering in our communities, how can we be fully content and happy, you know, if we're living, trying to be sensitive, whole human beings? So that's hard. It's it's a negativity, isn't it? And I can't imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end of it.
No, constantly, and not being able to escape it, not being able to identify out of it or choose another way or anything necessarily. Yeah.
Probably ignoring it is the best, you know, like, to, if it's not violently being inflicted. But then of course that seeps through into all kinds of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But and I love Alice Springs. I will always go back. And part of the reason I love it is because it's literally multicultural.
Yes. Well, the Afghans have got I think a really big history there as well. They do in Broken Hill, that's for sure. So a lot of the outback towns have always been multicultural
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
were the ones who carried the whiteys around on their back of their camels,
On
or
the
their packs,
yeah,
that sort of thing, and guided them through the deserts and how to, all that sort of stuff as well.
yeah. All the camels that are
Mm.
wandering around. Do you see camels at Broken Hill?
Not wandering around, but there is actually a camel place. Friends that I used to stay with have like a farm there that they do tourism with camels, and I know
Oh, nice.
they're creating a camel museum, like Australian Camel Museum, which will be an amazing attraction when that's ready. And it
Yeah.
does focus on, I mean, there's a mosque in Broken Hill. It's not an everyday functioning mosque, but it does have, I think, open times, because there was a strong Muslim community in Broken Hill, in the 1800s, really. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the same reason, for the camels. Yeah.
For the camels, yeah, and I went on a camel ride at Uluru, and they were talking about what a beautiful relationship the Afghan cameleers had with their camels, and how they
Yes.
treated them, and their
Yes.
connection with them. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's amazing, that history, isn't it? And
Yes. And you don't associate camels with Uluru, do you?
no, not really, no. And
No.
there's, I mean, when I go out to Kings Canyon, I always see a herd of wild or feral camels,
Oh,
healthy
right.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very happy wandering around out there. Yeah.
I'm probably extra happy now it's been some raining as well. So how
Yes,
good was it to
exactly.
see rain or water coming off the rock, off
Oh, it was
Uluru?
like
I saw some
I
of your photos and went, oh, that must be glorious in person.
I was praying for that for so long, just like, and I've got, It's Raining on the Rock, the song by John Williamson, and
Yeah.
I've got the Children's Daily version, and that was like, I'm like playing it to make it happen.
You're
And
doing a
then,
rain dance, were you?
yeah, and then there it was. And it was, I stopped being a retreat host on that day, and I was like a babbling mess. Oh my God, it's so amazing. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was so lovely.
Oh wow. When I went out to Broken Hill last year, I went out specifically because it had been raining and I knew that there had been floods through there, and I thought I have to see what it looks like with flowers and water and stuff. And on the way to Silverton. Silverton's about 25 k's sort of southwest from Broken Hill, and it's where Mad Max was filmed. But prior to that, it was actually the original silver mining town, Silverton. And anyway, there's a little creek that you cross over before you drive up into town, and it had water in it. I'd never seen it with water in it. It had water, and it was sort of sort of knee deep water, and it had been running, like it had stopped flood running, and so it was just water and trickling, and it just reflected the trees and the banks of it just reflected such different colors to when it had just been the red dirt, and
Yeah,
it was like, oh, I stood there and I went, oh, I nearly cried.
it is. It's just a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so you obviously love it out there. Is it somewhere you could see yourself living, or is it a place that you just go to?
No, like you, I'm every time I've got time, I'm in the real estate windows, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny, I caught up with my cousin who'd been in the UK for 10 years, and he and his partner had moved back to Australia, and for the first time, because they're down in Melbourne, so the first time I caught up with them was in Easter time. And he also loves Broken Hill, and he says, oh, I could have bought a house out there. And I said, well, now you tell me, I could have saved heaps of money if you'd bought a house. I would have been staying out there instead of paying for motel fees. Yeah, I could. I honestly I could, but Rachel, I'm married with children, and so I have obligations.
Yeah, see you everyone. Mum's moving
They're
to.
coastal people, they're not desert people, so dang it.
Okay, yes.
I'll just have to wait my time.
There is such a strong pull of the of the desert, isn't there?
Mm,
It's got its own beautiful energy, I think.
mm.
And I think that's why you get characters in those places. Do you find that there's
Yes.
real
Yeah.
characters? Like, not everyone is a racist. I don't want anyone to think that I'm
No.
thinking that about
No, no, no,
Alice.
no.
It's not like that. But there's real strong personalities and characters and people who make those places their home.
Yes. Yes. And they've got a saying that says, they've been away, but they've come back. So if they talk about people who are not from Broken Hill as being from away. So they
Oh,
could be from anywhere, but they're from away. And I've been away, but now I'm home. And many people who live in Broken Hill go home. And many
wow.
people who move to Broken Hill expecting to only be there, because they've been sent out on secondment, or, it's like my
Yes.
friend's husband, it was his first posting as a cop. They were there for 7 years and they've moved on, but, it has a sort of a pull on people, and a kind of a holding on people. And it's
Mm,
a very self-reliant town. And I guess I really soak that energy up,
mm.
that self-reliance. And yeah, so what, we've got to drive 3 hours to get to the next major town, but you do that to go and do whatever, and yeah, we'll have a bit of a whinge because we're too remote, nobody interesting comes out here, but when they do, they jump in, and they we're always well supported when I go out there for whatever I'm doing, or when I meet my friends from other states and we do an event there. It's always well supported, you know.
Yes.
So
Like a community feeling. So when there's
yeah,
something on, you go to it, you support it.
mm.
Because, yeah. Yeah.
And as much for the experience, but also to go, well, if we support it this time because we really like it, you'll come back and do it again. And come back and do it again next year, and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's that. And I could probably, like you, I could gush for ages, and
Yeah, it
nobody's
is.
got time for that.
I think I just fell in love with the place, and I think that's true
Yes,
of Australia in
yes,
general. But
yeah.
yeah, it is. It's like a romance, but it's with the place, not a person.
Oh dear. So that's it. So that'll be the tagline for the video.
Yeah, a love
Romancing
affair.
the rock.
Yeah, I like that. That's perfect. Romancing the rock. I saw
Yeah.
that one.
Jo Avalon's Cuppa Chat with Rachel Scoltock. ... Romancing the rock.
Yeah. Well, a love affair with the desert. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
What's happened to us? Oh
Oh,
dear.
nothing. We're perfectly normal. What are you saying? Nothing's happened to us at all.
Exactly. And it's, I don't know, it's something special, isn't it? It's something special. It's
Mm,
different.
mm. Yeah, it's unusual.
It's usually nice.
No. Oh goodness. Well, on that note, I reckon we should finish up the cuppa and
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It was a really good
thank you.
conversation. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It's good to chew the fat with a fellow Aquarian.
Yeah, that's right. Aquarian who loves to travel. That's
Yes,
it.
that's it. All right. Well, thanks again, and maybe we can catch up another time. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about something else next time. Talk about
Awesome.
angels.
Let's do let's do that.
Yes.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
Rachel.
Jo.
See you later on.
Bye.